Okay, so welcome back. This is going to be a very quick, simple tutorial showing you how to use rich text boxes in C#, Windows Forms, Visual Studio applications. And you can see here we've got an application we built in C#'s Visual Studio, Windows Forms. And we're building this in another series where we teach you what is a relay and how do they work. And we build this really cool application. I encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested. I also have a 3-part series for beginners on writing programs in C# and other videos showing you, for example, how to use these picture boxes and radio buttons. So I encourage you to look at that. In this video, we're going to look at rich text boxes. And in this simulation, when we start this up, I've got this yellow box in the middle, and this is a rich text box. And you can see it's giving a reading, and there's a particular reason why I chose to use a rich text box in this application. And let me show you an example of why I did it. So you can see I have a second font and a second readout in a different color and different size in this rich text box, which you can't really do in a regular text box. And this is one of the nice things about rich text boxes is you can select the font type, whether you want italics, different colors, in the same text box. And you can do a bunch of other things. But let's take a look at how you might do something like this with a rich text box. So here's a simple application, a solution in C# Windows Forms in Visual Studio. And it's going to show how we can do some stuff with a rich text box. So I'm going to start it up. And I've got this form here, and this first box on top is a rich text box, and on the bottom is a regular text box. And I've got two buttons. I've got a format selection and an exit button. Now you can see that in the rich text box, it starts up and it's got two different fonts, different colors. What I can do is I can select part of this rich text box and hit the format selection, and you can see that button click changes the font and font size in the text box, and I can do it again. So you can start to see that you can do a lot of things with a rich text box if that's important to you. But for me, the nice thing is I can have multiple different fonts in the same text box. Now, an important thing about this rich text box that can get you kind of confused is that in order to change a font inside this rich text box, you need to have it selected first, then you can change it. And that's really, really important. That's why we have down here the feedback on where the selection is started. So I can put the cursor up here in front of this A, do format selection. The selection is started at 0.0. And I can go up to here and it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and it reads 4. So you can start to see that the selection is really important because that's the point at which the rich text box is focusing on any changes. So if I select 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then I do format selection, and you can see it's still selection at 4. So one of the challenges is trying to figure out what's selected before you make the change. So let's take a look at the code and see what we're talking about. So here is our Form 1, and again, here's the design. In Form 1, I basically have two buttons. Button 2 is the exit. We're not going to look at that. Button 1 is what you use to format whatever is selected. So now in the main Form 1, when I start it up, you can see that the rich text box has two lines of text and they each have different fonts, different font colors. So let's see how we can set that up initially. Here's Form 1, initialize component, the standard initialize component. And here is the first black text, and then the next one is the red text. And this is kind of the magic sequence that seems to work when you want to set up text in a rich text box. Now for this first line, amps 5.6, what I do is I do rich text box 1 dot selection color equals color dot black. So you first define the selection color, and then you define the selection font is a new font, and I'm choosing Times New Roman 24. And then what you do is you do an append text. Now, why this works this way, I still haven't figured it out, but it seems to work fine. I basically select the color, select the font, and then do an append text. It doesn't seem to work if I do a RichTextBox1.text equals. It seems to want me to do an append text in order to make sure that whatever I am putting in the text box is going to be with this color black and this font. So you choose the color, you choose the font, then do an append text, and this will be printed with a black font and a Times New Roman. Again, I'm not certain why, but it seems to work. Now, if I want to append that second line in red, I do the same sequence. Now, if we start this again, you can see the first one is in Times New Roman. The second one is in a different font, and it turns out this is Microsoft Sans Serif. So if we go to this rich text box and select it, and we go down, and we can see that the default is Microsoft Sans Serif 21.75 font size. So this will change the first string to color black Times New Roman. The second one, all I've got is I've selected color red. However, I haven't specified the selection font. So it's going to use the default font that we just saw, the Microsoft Sans Serif. And it's going to say fault detected. So I start it up, I've got Times New Roman, and then the default because I didn't specify. So you really got to be careful to make sure you know what you're doing. And then in the text box, I am giving the selection start, and there is a RichTextBox1.selection start, which gets or sets the starting point of the text selected in the text box. And when we run it, you can see that after we have done the append text, the selection start is at the end of this last string that we appended to the rich text box. And that's position 28. If you add up all these characters, it comes out to position 28. So presumably the way it works is that when you define your selection, when you do the append text, it starts at the beginning of this append text as the selection, and everything inside the append text is the selection. So if we go down here and we do our append text and we have the fault detected in red, if we add another append text, it's all going to follow that previous selection. So we'll run it, and we've added more stuff. No, it doesn't. So what it does is it uses just the default Microsoft Sans Serif black, and it doesn't take that red that we had in the previous append text. So apparently each append text you need to assign a whatever selection color and font you want. All it applies to is whatever is in that append text, that is the selection. So again, you got to know what you're doing. You got to figure out where the selection is. So now, how does it work if I use this format selection? I've got this preset format. I will select some text here and hit this button, format selection, and it changes whatever I have selected manually to a new font. So how does that work? Well, let's get out of here, and here's the button one click event. And all it does is it says, here's the selection color. I want blue, and I want a font of Consolas 32. And whenever I click this button, it applies those to whatever is selected manually. So that's how that works. You can do manual selections and change them in real time. So that gives you the ability to change fonts in real time if you need that. Not sure why you would, but that can help you understand what's going on. So that's about it for this one, Rich Text Boxes. There's a lot more functionality. Personally, I don't use this very often, and I really don't care about the other stuff, but you can look at the Microsoft documentation and go crazy with it. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you like any of these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and most of all, please let others know that we're here so we get some views. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, take care. Have a really good day. Thanks.